Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel, Math Made Easy with Terry in 10 minutes. We'll be talking about rationalizing the denominator. This is the law 6, okay? Please try as much as possible to review the previous video, and from there, so you can also understand the previous laws we talked about, like how to add and subtract, multiply, divide, and the quotient. Okay. Now, the reason why we have rationalizing the denominator is because usually in surds, it is not usually acceptable to have surds like this, 3 over root 5. Like you can have surds at the denominator. So it's usually not acceptable, or you can have surds like this, 5 over 3 minus root 5, something like this. You can have surds at the denominator, regardless if it's a simple surd or a compound surd, or a mixed surds or something like this. You can have something like this, a mixed surds, let's say 5 root 7. This is not allowed, okay? So usually the best way to do it is that we have to remove the surds, all right? And also, if you remember last video, we talked about conjugative surds, and we're going to use that concept here. So that is in law 5. And if you've not reviewed law 5, you need to go back and try as much as possible to look at it. All right. So let's get cracking now. So the first one is if you have a simple surd as a denominator, like a over root b, okay? I told you in order to remove this surd, you multiply both sides by root b over root b. In the first video, I told you that root a over root a is equal to what? 1. So that means when a surd divides itself, it's equal to 1, all right? So because of that concept, we're going to apply it here. So that means we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by the surd here. So we're going to have root b over root b, and that will give us a root b over what? B. Is that making sense? So that will give us a root b over b. So because a times root b will give us a root b, root b times root b will give us what? B. Is that okay? So for example, if we have 5 divided by root 7, okay? In order to remove the surds, that's what we call rationalizing. So you multiply the top by root 7, and you multiply the bottom by what? Root 7. So it's going to give us 5 times root 7 will give us 5 root 7 divided by root 7 times root 7 will give us what? 7. Okay, because if you remember, I told you root a times root a is equal to what? A. So that is the concept we're having here. So now we have 5 root 7 as the answer. If you want to pick another example, let's pick one. Let's say the 3 root 5 we talked about. So 3 over root 5. The best way to solve this is going to multiply both sides by root 5 divided by root 5. And that will give us what? 3 root 5 over what? 5. Okay? We still have, if you have a mixed surds, it's going to apply the same concept. So if, for instance, we are having next one, a over b root c. Okay? It's still the same thing. It's a mixed surds. You multiply both sides by the surd itself. Can you see? So you multiply both sides by root c. And that will give us a times root c will give you a root c divided by root c times b root c. All right, we have b root c multiplied by root c. I told you when you have this, it will be b times 1. There's an invisible 1 here, right? So b times 1 will give you b. Root c times root c will give you c. So to give you what? bc. So for example, let's clean this. For example, if we have 3 divided by 5 root 7, okay? That will give us multiply top by root 7 divided by what? Root 7. It will now give us 3 times root 7 will give you 3 root 7. Then 5 times this will give you 5 times root 7 times root 7 will give you 7. So it's going to give us 3 root 7 divided by what? 35. Okay? So let's take another example. We had 5 over 4 root 3. The same thing, you multiply the top by root 3. divided by what? Root 3. And that will give you 5 times root 3 will give us 5 root 3 divided by 4 times 1 will give us 4 multiplied by root 3 times root 3 will give us 3. And that will give us 5 root 3 divided by what? 12. So we talked about the first one, when you have it like a over b root c. We'll talk about this, which was second, a over root b. Now, we're going to talk about another type of surds, that is the other rule under rationalizing. Now, what about if we have something like r over p plus q root n, all right? Now, if you look at the previous ones, the surds were either a simple surd, so this was simple, this was mixed, okay? The denominator was simple surds, and the denominator here was mixed. So in the first one here, we're talking about simple in the denominator. And the second one here, we're talking about mixed, all right? Now, but if you look at the next one, what we are having at the denominator are what we call the compound surds. So if you go to my previous video, I talked about the types of surds. Is that okay? Now, and to do the compound surds, how do you do it? For compound surds, what you do, you multiply by the conjugate, okay? And in the previous video, I explained to you, when we talk about conjugate, we're talking about the same surds, but different sign. Is that all right? So in this case, you're gonna multiply it by p minus q root n divided by p minus what? Q root n. Are you seeing it? So you're going to multiply this by what? The conjugate. And remember, I told you in the previous video that if you multiply by the conjugate, the square root sign disappears. Is that okay? So let's open the bracket. So it's going to give us r multiplied by p minus q root n divided by, so we're going to have p, so we're going to multiply p q root n multiplied by p minus q root n. I told you, you open the bracket, so it's going to p times p will give us p squared. If you remember, I told you a plus b multiplied by c plus d, expanding bracket. Well, you have a times c will give us ac, a times d will give us ad, b times c will give us bc, and b times d will give us bd. So exactly the same thing we're going to do here. So p times p will give us p squared minus p times q root n will give us minus pq root n. The same thing, q root n times p, okay, q root n now times p will give us plus pq root n, and q root n times minus q root n. So plus q times minus q will give you minus q squared. Root n times root n will give you what? N. All right? So minus pq root n plus pq root n will cancel out. Will give you 0. So you're going to have p squared minus q squared n. So this is going to give us p squared minus q squared n. Then when you open the bracket for the top, when I told you a, b plus c, it will become a times b will give you ab, and a times c will give you what? AC. So that means r times p will give you rp minus r times q root n will give you minus rq root n divided by p squared minus q squared n. Okay, that's the answer for that. Okay, that's how you expand bracket when you have compound surd as the denominator. All right, that's how you do, you multiply by the conjugate. So similarly, when you do for r p minus q root n, this time you multiply the conjugate, is going to give you p plus q root n. So you can see the final answer we have, there is no surds in the denominator. So the same thing, when you multiply by p plus q root n, so I want you to do it yourself. So it's going to open the same thing. We're having the same denominator as the first one. So it's going to be r times p plus q root n divided by p minus q root n times p plus q root n will give us p squared minus q squared n, like, all right? So we've talked about this already. If you open the bracket, it will give you this, and that will give us rp plus rq root n over p squared minus q squared n. So for example, if we have 3 divided by 5 minus 2 root 3, okay? So in order to do this, we have to multiply the top by the conjugate of the denominator, and that'll give us 5 plus 2 root 3 divided by 5 plus 2 root 3. Is that okay? That will be divided by 5 plus 2 root 3. And that will give us 3 times 5 will give us 15. 3 times 2 root 3 will give us what? Or let me put it this way first to make it easier. So it's going to be 3 multiplied by 5 plus what? 2 root 3 divided by, we're going to open the bracket now. We have 5 minus 2 root 3, okay, multiplied by 5 plus 2 root 3. So 5 times 5 will give you 25. 5 times 2 root 3 will give us what? 10 root 3. So 5 times 2 is 10. Then minus 2 root 3 times 5 will give you 5 times minus 2 will give you minus 10 root 3. And minus 2 root 3 times plus 2 root 3. So minus 2 times plus 2 will give you plus 4. Root 3 times root 3 will give you what? 3, okay? So plus 10, we cancel this. So you have 25. Sorry, this is going to be minus, okay? Here it's going to be minus because we are having minus 2 times plus 2. So that will give us minus 4. Is that okay? And that will give us 25 minus 12. And that will give us what? 113. So the answer we're going to have here is what? 13. All right? So the answer for that is 13. Then when you have that now, we can now go and simplify further. This will give us 3 times 5 will give us 15 plus 6 root 3 all over what? 13, which you can also write as 15 over 13 plus 6 root 3 over what? 13. Okay? So that is that for that. So when you have a compound, you just multiply by the what? Conjugate. So and one more I'm going to just put there. If you have something like r over p plus root n, okay? The same thing, okay? You multiply both sides by the conjugate, okay? This is also a compound, okay? So it's going to be p minus root n divided by p minus what? Root n. And that will give us r into bracket p minus root n, okay? Now you open the bracket, you have p plus root n multiplied by p minus root n. So that will give us p times p will give us p squared. P times minus root n will give us minus p root n. Root n times p will give us plus p root n. Now we have root n times minus root n will give us minus n, okay? Because we have minus root n times minus root n. So this root n times root n will give us n, plus times minus will give us minus. So this will cancel this. You're going to have p squared minus n. So it's going to be over p squared minus n. And when you do this together, you open the bracket, it's going to be rp minus r root n divided by p squared minus n. So if you pick an example on this, which will be the last one for this video, we're going to solve that now. So we have, let's say we have 3 divided by 5 plus root 2. Now you also have a compound. So regardless, when you have a compound surd as the denominator, you always rationalize. It's going to be 5 minus what? Root 2 divided by 5 minus what? Root 2. So it's going to be 3 into bracket 5 minus root 2 divided by, so we are having 5 plus root 2 multiplied by 5 minus what? Root 2. Is that okay? So 5 times 5 will give you 25. 5 times minus root 2 gives minus 5 root 2. Plus root 2 times 5 will give us plus 5 root 2. And plus root 2 times minus root 2 will give us minus what? 2. Is that making sense? Then what do? It's going to be plus minus 5 root 2 plus 5 root 2 will cancel out to give you 0. Then you have 25 minus 2, and that will give us 23. So the answer here is 23. Then what do you do next? You expand the bracket. So remember how to expand. We talked about that. So when you have A, B plus C, you open the bracket. It's going to give you A, B plus what? AC. So the same thing. 3 times 5 will give us 15 minus 3 root 2 over 23. And which is the same thing as saying 15 over 23 minus 3 root 2 over what? 23. And that will be the answer for that. So that will bring us to the end of the video on rationalizing. So basically, what we said in this video, when you have a simple surd, okay, when you have simple surd, you just multiply it by the surds, the top and the bottom. Same thing, if you have a mixed surd at the bottom, you just multiply by the surd only, the top and the bottom. But if you have a conjugate, okay, a compound surd, you multiply by the conjugate. Is that okay? So for compound surds, you multiply by the conjugate, regardless how it comes. For a compound surd, you multiply by the conjugate. And then you solve it. And you notice that after you rationalize, your denominator will never have a surd in it. All right, thank you very much. Okay, let me just add maybe an example, a more little example. Let's say we have 2 plus root 3 divided by 3 minus 5 root 2. Same thing. Although you have surds, well, what you multiply, you rationalize by these one here. 3 plus 5 what? Root 2 divided by 3 plus 5 root 2. Is that okay? Are you seeing it? So you see what you multiply is with the conjugate at the bottom. Then you open it, so that'll give you 2 plus root 3 multiplied by 3 plus 5 root 2 divided by 3 minus 5 root 2 multiplied by 3 plus 5 root 2. So we're going to open it individually. So just to remind you again, when you have 2 similar to algebra, okay, you have A times C to give you AC. Then you have A times D to give you what? AD. You have B times C to give us BC, and B times D to give us what? BD. Is that okay? So the same thing, we're going to have 2 times 3 will give us 6. 2 times 5 root 2 will give us what? 10 root 2. The next one we're going to have will be root 3 times 3 will give us what? 3 root 3. And we have root 3 times 5 root 2 will give us 5 root 6. Are you seeing it? So the first one, 2 times 3 give us 6. 2 times 5 root 2 will give us 10 root 2. You go to the next one, root 3 times 3 will give us 3 root 2. And 5 root 2 times root 3 is going to give us 5 root 6. So please go back to my video on product law on how to multiply surds. So we're just applying those rules here. So we're going to go to the next one. 3 times 3 will give us what? 9. 3 times 5 root 2 will give us what? 15 what? Root 2. Minus 5 root 2 times 3 will give us minus 15 root 2. And minus 5 root 2 times 5 root 2. So minus 5 times 5 will give us minus 25. And root 2 times 2 will give us what? 2. Then you can now simplify. We have, so you can see, because in the rules of addition, I told you that if the surds are not the same, you can add or what? Subtract. So if you look at this, the surds are not the same. Is that all right? So that means they all stays what? The same. So they're going to say the same. So it's going to be 6 plus 10 root 2 plus 3 root 3 plus 5 root 6 divided by. Now this is plus 5 root 2 minus 5 root 2. We cancel out. So you're going to have 9 minus what? 50. And that will give us 6 plus 10 root 2 plus 3 root 3 plus 5 root 6 divided by 9 minus 50 will give us minus what? 41. And that will be the answer for that. So you can see, finally, at the answer we are having, there is no surds there. All right, so we'll call it round up here. Then the next video, we're going to talk about law 7, which is the last law here. We'll talk about how do we apply the equality law, all right? Equality law will be the next one we'll talk about. Is that okay? So if you're having any question, please feel free to drop it in the comment section, or you can send me a chat directly. Is that okay? And I will get back to you on it. Or you can send me an email and I'll respond to you. So I'm going to see you in the next video. And don't forget to subscribe so that when I upload new videos, you'll be the first to know. Thank you very much, and I will see you soon.